Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL. I haven't done this in a long time. I think this one was worth kind of mentioning. First, we have some new EEs, and then a controversial debate on counter set. So let's get into it. First things first, we have this special side story, which is a 3-week long side story, and indeed it's pretty special. It has their own kind of intro animation, which is kind of surprising. It means like they're making this a big deal, or are they making almost all their new events big deals? Either way, I'm pretty happy to see, like, they spent some time in the production value, even though the clip of this video is like, I think it's like literally like 15 seconds. It's still like high quality. It's the stuff that you would expect from Epic 7. Don't know what to expect from the side story itself, or even like what's the reason behind it, but I suppose, like, if they're gonna if we're gonna complain about, like, Smilegate not developing new stuff, the game is stale or whatnot, I mean, they're still putting work into this kind of stuff. So like new splash screens, animations, and at least they're trying to make this like a bigger deal than it may seem to be. So I know that there could be a lot of players that be like, whatever, you got a 12-second animation, a new splash screen, and then so what, the event is pretty much the same. I do think that is a cool attempt that they're trying a little bit different stuff. I recently did a 50-minute video review on another game for my work, and one of the things I mentioned in that game specifically is this kind of immersive UI. It's funny that, like, what I'm looking at here right now on the screen is kind of what I commented on that game. So like technically these could have been just like regular buttons, but Smilegate wanted to do this thing where you're actually clicking this almost like you're in that physical space. So I think this is pretty cool. More or less it will function in terms of like rewards or whatnot. It will function similar to what we've done in the past in like other side stories. So I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna rate this. Like, is this gonna be more of a hassle? It doesn't seem to be. I think it seems to be maybe a bit better than, let's say, the Assyria summer side story, or even the current one, the repeat one going on right now, the Thieves in the Moon or whatever. I don't know what this is called. But I remember back in the day when they introduced that puzzle piece type of side story where you kind of like open a puzzle piece and it's like do 5 hunts, collect 20 helmets or whatever. I remember that was like very, very groundbreaking for a player like me, because I can still do the side story, I can still get the rewards from a bi-weekly side story, but I could use my energy not into the side story. Like, I can do it into hunts, I can do it into anything else, or I can get it from arena flags. So I know they're trying something new here. Might not be so groundbreaking in terms of energy spent. I still prefer the puzzle type of side story, the puzzle pieces, because that way I can get the most efficiency out of it. But outside of that, the rewards they're okay. Though even the 4-star artifact, I would arguably say it has some use. So there's the map there, preview. A lot of the functions are the same as the other side stories that we've already experienced, so nothing too new, except that for this one they just wanted to really, like, change up the art style and how they approach the actual event itself. So I gotta give them credit where credit is due. It looks very polished in terms of, like, this is from a development standpoint. They have to make like new graphics like this. Like this, so like there's like artwork going into it. It's not just like it's not super easy, let's just put it that way. The artifact though, Blazing Full Moon Trophy, this will be it has really high base health, very low attack, so it could be a very supportive type of artifact. It could be used on a knight, I can imagine. It could be used on a Soul Weaver, if the Soul Weaver has like really good healing skills already. But when an enemy is defeated, it recovers health of all allies by 14%, can only be activated once per turn, and effect does not stack with other artifacts of the same name. So like, I don't know if this could be used in PvP, because like, who will hold this? I don't think it's as groundbreaking as something like Warhorn, but it could have its use. I think when it comes to like maybe PvE, it might be a good artifact for players who are kind of new and farming Azimanic, because like if you have like, let's say, the Tamarine with this 14% health is not too bad from killing the eggs. It can only be done once per turn, but Azimatic spawns the eggs pretty fast. So that's like something that would come to mind. I don't know about expos. You don't have any really ads to kill in expos. So it probably has some use, but I can't think of really anything specific right now. Belian's being released. So I made a Belian initial thoughts video, and to sum up that video, if you haven't checked that out, or if you want to see my full thoughts, it hasn't really changed. I was hoping that they would change the soul acquisition thing, the soul acquisition suppression rather, change it to a conditional one. Like I wouldn't mind if it siphons souls on a condition, but this also means that as the match, let's just say RTA, as the RTA match goes on, your opponent will not be able to generate souls at all. So at the end of the day, she becomes that either, if you're gonna rely on soul burns, you know it, like a May Chloe soul burn can be very clutch, right? You can get that extra revive turn in before your enemy can kill your May Chloe. The soul burn on FCC, this is not just a toggles ancient book counter, which I know that was like the very positive reaction. It's like, oh, no more toggles ancient book. She could be the force ban if you have to, you know, use book. But again, it's just more of like, if she's on the playing field, no one gets souls. I think my thoughts hasn't changed on it. I think that it's even if it doesn't turn out to be OP, it's a lazy game design mechanic. Soul burns are part of the strategy in the game. Right? Getting souls, using specific skills in order to gain souls quicker, so you'll be able to soul burn, etc., etc. I do understand that, you know, the soul burn 8 high wins and stuff like that. You know, there's some soul burns that are more broken than not, but at least you still have to kind of generate it. So, like, yeah, any condition, in my opinion, would have made her a bit more, at least the S2 itself, less overpowered. While I know the argument is that Belian is not an overpowered hero in terms of, like, you know, what she can do. She's AoE only, so that means that, you know, there's a lot of heroes that can counter her, and she self buffs every turn. So like Landy can counter her, Lacerated Crowd can counter her and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm not saying that she's overpowered, but it's that one mechanic, that soul suppression, it bothers me. I just think that it's a lazy design. But regardless, if you want to see my full thoughts on it, definitely check that out. She can be imprinted by Key of Intellect, and as it says here, you can she can be imprinted by herself, unknown slates or whatnot, but Key of Intellect will be available once you pull Belian. It will be in your Transmit Stone shop. So Landy, Wall of Order, limited summon. So I don't know, there's a rumor going around that there could be another limited coming after. Now I'm not quite sure about this, but apparently it's an official tweet. I saw an image where it says something about, like, I remember the image in my head. There's like Landy on the left, Luna on the right, and there's like a Covenant bookmark in the center. If you're watching this video and you know what I'm talking about, you will at least know what you'll know what I'm talking about. And then I think the caption to that tweet was something like the 3 L's or something, or 3 limited L's or something like that. It might not have limited, it may not have that word in there, but I think the assumption is that there's Luna there in the image, there's Landy there in the image, but then who's the third L, right? And so, you know, to wrap up episode 4, we still have that, everybody kind of wants that Commander Laika, I believe. Kind of cute, and then she had this like kind of transformation in her artwork near the end of the story. Apologies for spoilers. But people want to see her, right? She was animated in the story, and also that Breenus girl, I don't know, maybe she'll drop too, who knows. But could it be that there's a limited hero coming after Landy? I'm not quite sure. If there is, this has definitely been one of the longest limited like streaks that we've had, right? Like two ReZero collab, and we had all the summer heroes, including Summertime Assyria, so SSB, Summertime, Holiday Euphine, Rem, Amelia, and then we had Luna return, and then Landy return, and then if it's Laika, oof, it's gonna be tough for her, especially for free to play. Regardless though, Landy is still proving to be very, very strong right now. There are more counters to her, including Fire Mercedes is up there, Fire Charlotte is being pretty well built right now, but Landy is still very, very oppressive, very, very good for team-wide. Her self-damage is good. So if you don't have a Landy, I would still recommend at least pulling one. Wall of Order, on the other hand, is a very specific type of artifact. I've seen Landy's user, I've seen Operator Cigarette's user. It does depend. So, you know, probably don't go too crazy for the artifact, but Landy definitely. I might try to get at least one imprint during the banner's return here, and then we'll see, because she's very strong, but like mine works without the imprints, but it's very nice to have the imprints, right? Whale talk. So 3 new exclusive equipments. I want to spend some time talking about this. We got, you know, we had 24 hours guessing whether it was BBK, Bloodblade Corinne, or the blue Ice Corinne. Ended up it wasn't Ice Corinne after all. I would think it was mentioned this on my stream last night that the EE given to Clarissa was like obviously a PvE thing. I think there was an argument of someone saying that why would they give a PvE hero EE or something like that, and it turns out it probably still is for PvE. We'll talk about that in a bit. So Senya first. So Grace of Madness, 7 to 14% health. This one, I think it's fine. I think 14% health, I'm very happy with this. It's better than, I think, getting effectiveness in her kit, to be honest. So like it's either attack or health. She already has attack percent self-imprint, and I don't necessarily think that was necessary because you're gonna get the health somewhere. Ideally, people will build Senya with high HP. Defense would be very nice as well, but for heroes who kind of like don't want to rely on killing her through crit, because I mean crit on crit damage heroes will kill her quicker if you can crit, but if people are using like true damage, like, you know, Blue Crow, ML Haste, Last Rider Crow, what's his name, Sage Baal and Cezanne, like any kind of true damage to just negate the critical hit chance or whatever, then, you know, having high health is probably more important than defense, since most of those heroes, Dark Corvus as well, most of those heroes like ignore defense to some degree. So having high health I think is pretty good. Spear of Vengeance, all 3 are okay. Actually no, rather 1 on each skill, but 2 of them are very good, I would say, and then 1 is like I think it's pretty obvious which one I'm going with the Spear of Vengeance is the S1, recovers health of the caster after using Spear of Vengeance. Amount recovered increases proportion of the caster's attack. So this could be pretty big. It just depends on how much she heals. That's a pretty big deal. On average, most people have like a 4.8 to 5k Senya. We're talking about a usable speed with like very high bulk, defense and HP. And so we'll have to see how much health that gains. I think in a one-on-one scenario, this could be her go-to EE. It just really depends on how you use Senya. I think that's the issue there. The S2 one, Indomitable Spirits, Spear of Vengeance, I would say that if you have her on an Elber Spiritual Sword type of build, it might be better than a Spear of the New Dawn kind of build. But it does depend. We'll have to see the mod again. Indomitable Spirit, the duration of the random buff granted by Grace of the Battlefield is increased by 1 turn. I personally don't really like this one. I think it's definitely like they needed to do something with the S2 or something. Could have been better, I think. But in terms of like, you have a 50% chance for them to not crit you, and every 2 turns, then you get Grace of the Battlefield. And then on top of that, you're rolling, I think, like what, 4 buffs, potential buffs. One of them is an effectiveness buff, so if you get the extra turn on that, it might not be super useful. If you get it on immunity, you get it on defense buff, you get it on heal over time, I think, you know, arguably speaking, that's pretty good. But then again, you're banking on 1 major roll of RNG, whether you get crit or not, and then the last one would be like you know, which buff you actually get. So in my opinion, the S2 is probably out of question for most players, at least for me. And then the last one, Dragon Slayer Strike for the S3, grants increased attack greater to the caster for 2 turns. After using Dragon Slayer Strike, takes priority over a counterattack. So I was reading this before, I was like, first things first, I mean, it's a greater attack buff, so that's very, very good. Especially like I said, she would have like, you know, 4.8 to 5k. Some people have higher attack than that, so greater attack buff on that would be insane. That would be very, that would be more insane paired with the Lilius, because she already self greater attack buffs. So you actually can lower the requirement for a Lilius Senya type cleave. because she can self-attack buff. But even that, so even without a Lilies in mind, that's pretty insane. So the amount of damage that she can do if she's on a Spear of a New Dawn build with a greater attack buff, ooh, that could be very, very nasty. It takes priority over a counterattack. I was reading this and trying to understand what that meant. At first I thought it was like the buff of the greater attack buff goes before her counter buff. So in terms of like if there was like a 1-turn strip or something, or one buff strip, it won't strip the counterattack. But then it would have read like takes priority over a counterattack buff, I would assume. So I think takes priority over a counterattack means probably that you have the increased attack buffed stat on your Senya. In case, let's say she uses the S3, she gets the greater attack buff and then Rem counters. I think what it means is like when Rem counters and doesn't crit Senya, Rem receives that passive damage based on a greater attack buff attack. I think that's what it means. I might be wrong about that, but regardless, even without that explanation, I think the S3 one is what most people are thinking of right now in terms of the go-to, because you're already guaranteed like, you know, how to calculate the total attack since there's no RNG in it. The first one, Spear of Vengeance, is really just, again, the healing mods, like how much does she heal? We'll have to see. Vildred, I don't know if like people already use Vildred in like potential cleave comps. This could just make him better, but outside of like a standalone hero, I think just EE just becomes for people who have Vildred as their priority farmer. It just improves that, I think. So Blade of Insignia up to 14% attack, and you know, being a Leo thief, he has very high base attack. I think it's like 1280 something. First one is Dancing Blade. So Dancing Blade increases the combat readiness of the caster by additional 5% when an enemy is defeated. That's pretty good. For like people who want him to cut in a cleave kind of comp, that could be very nice. Probably won't be that useful for farming. Blade Ascent 1, damage dealt increased by 10% when using Blade Ascent. That's also very nice to have. You can have him with his is this a Sword of Summer Twilight is his artifact? You could have that with this, so you would have like defense pen with increased attack, so like half of a Portrait of Savior, or you can have increases critical hit damage of the caster for 2 turns after using Blade Descent. So after if you could kill with the Blade Descent and use Dancing Blade and your S1, they'll all have a critical hit damage buff. So overall, I think his is like pretty good as well. It's just more of like his usability, especially in PvP, is still somewhat more limited. He's a lot more usable if you do have a triple S, so for that 12 speed AoE imprint. And then we got Corinne, Sword of the Righteous Path, 8 to 16% effectiveness, so really siding on that PvE kind of PvE use. I used to use Corinne in my Banshee one-shot. I did remove her, but now I'm using her in my Wyvern one-shot. But there's a lot of Wyvern one-shot players who have already, you know, they're not using Corinne anymore. They're using some new tech, which I won't get into in this video, but at least for those who are still using Corinne and have Corinne slightly invested, this would just make it a lot easier in my opinion. So Sequential Cutter increases the combat readiness of the caster by 15% after using Sequential Cutter. This one I think will be less for one-shots, maybe if you're using her for hunts, but like a longer run type of hunt. And then Blade Art Flash dispels 1 buff from the enemy when using Blade Art Flash. This effect is applied before the defense break. So I think this is maybe more usable in I'm thinking more PvP scenario. I don't know who would you need to debuff really for this, so I'm not quite sure about that, but I guess it's nice to have. Having a dispel before the death break on any hero, PvE or PvP, is pretty good. And then Blade Art Thunder inflicts 2 bleeding effects on an enemy for 2 turns after using Blade Art Thunder. So I think again for like Wyvern one shots and you're kind of securing debuffs or anything like that, I mean this will be useful. If it's not for one shot and you just have her just for regular farming Wyvern, then it's still useful, right? So kind of nice so you don't have to use the Torn Sleeve. So feels bad that I actually went to like, I think I powder shopped the Torn Sleeve when Baiken returned last time, because I never got a Torn Sleeve. I bet I never use that artifact anymore. So, and it feels even worse now that Torn Sleeve was like majority of them used it on Corinne, but then and then she gets an EE pretty much with Torn Sleeve in it. So feels bad, man. Some hero CP improvements, especially for heroes like Knight and Soul Weavers, they will reflect better, so they'll have higher CP. But then the requirement for the points are kind of scaled up accordingly, so you're not really going to be getting like easy world boss points, so to speak, but at least it will be scaled up. I suppose it's just balancing out what stats like give in terms of CP, so all the numbers will look a bit different now. So account reviews, or what we used to hold as like very high CP heroes, will have a very different meaning, especially when it comes to Knights and Soul Weavers. Hero recall details. Okay, so now this is getting to a bit of a controversial thing. I read the Stove page comments, I've seen people talk about it. I'll definitely have my feedback on it, but first things first is the 4-star Purgus and the Christie. They used to have a benefit where the counter attack set had a higher chance to counterattack than it should have, will be fixed. So this one is that counterattack set is not at the labeled rate. Okay, so that's a totally different thing. But the second thing that compounds for these two heroes specifically is that Green Purgus was able to have I think it's 30% counterattack, and then 30% counterattack innate, and then with the counterattack set he'll have a 50% to counterattack, and when he counterattacks it's AoE. So that's very powerful. I don't know about Christie myself in terms of, I've never used her, but in terms of Green Purgus, I have been slayed by him before. I have used him in the past, and it was very, very OP. It was very funny that I had this conversation with some of my Patreon members on whether or not it was a separate formula, and I told them that it was a total formula in terms of it's 30 plus 20 equals 50% to counterattack. But what they're doing is that it's going to be 30% as one roll to possibly counterattack, and then versus a 20% roll to counterattack. So in other words, it's multiplied. It's not multiplicative. It's not additive. So in that sense, you're technically lowering the odds of Purgus specifically, that again I have knowledge of, Purgus counterattacking. You have a lower chance of that counterattacking. Now, so there's recalls and stuff like that, but you don't get any selectors, you just get the stuff back. I don't know if mine was invested. I don't think it is anymore. He got recalled before, I think. And I'm gonna recall him again if I don't if I have him like in imprinted and stuff, I'm going to recall him probably. Let's see here. So one thing I wanted to do, coin shop renewal is not important. I mean, if you don't have Violet, although Covenant coins are very, very expensive, so I probably wouldn't suggest people getting them. It's easier just to pull on the banner, to be honest. It's cheaper. Blood Moon Haste, a lot of people have been waiting for this one, so have fun, boys. And then LQC as well for people who need her. This is what I want to talk about. Okay, right here. So usually I do skip anything that doesn't have images leading it. I usually skip the text around it, so it's pretty bad. But I will talk about this. So this is a pretty controversial, and I have to say that this leads to a lot of questions, and I think the majority of the community asking the questions, they have the right to do so. And again, like I said, I'm going to give my thoughts on it, my personal opinion. So an issue with the counterattack set value was shown lower than it actually will be fixed. So this is a big thing, right? So this ends up being like a trust issue, right? In terms of something that we all know, like back in the day, especially when Charles on Elber Sutro's sword and on counter set was ruling the PvP defense kingdom, right? And you know what? Not even too long ago, I think last season of regular arena, was a Skyward season, I was like, you know, molding on stream all the time because like people had Rowana on defense, counter Rowana on Celestine, right? But she would like counter at like 80% of the time, which we're just like, no way, there's no way this is 20%, right? That's bogus, right? But you know, it's like Twitch acting, right? It's stream content, so people are laughing, and everybody's experienced it. But apparently, it's not at 20%. So 20% is what it's written as. Counter set gives you 20% chance to counter with a basic skill, but but it's apparently 30%. So they're not going to be nerfing it down to 20%. Apparently they're not. So the compensation is like, oh, it's just apologize for the inconvenience, but they're not going to be lowering down to 20%. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to relabel counters attack set to be 30%, I believe. I'm not quite sure, because this is what I'm hearing, is that, oh, they're not going to nerf it, they're going to keep it, but they're already giving compensation, so I'm not quite sure which direction it will go. Regardless, there's two very wide, I would say, effects. I think there are players who have the mindset that, oh, because it's RNG anyways, you don't know, so it doesn't matter whether or not it's 30% in the past and it'll be 30% in the future, or if it's going to be 30% in the past but then it's going to be 20% in the future. In my opinion, it's a pretty big difference. We're talking about like 1 in 5 chance of countering if it was a 20%, but when it's 30%, it feels much higher. There's quite a big leap in terms of those two differences, in my opinion. So I don't think that at least on this patch note, we have the decision on whether or not they're going to go true to the text, so they're going to actually make it mechanically 20% counter, or are they going to change the text to reflect what it is currently in game. Again, what I've been hearing is that they're going to change the text to reflect 30%. But at least in this case, I think I saw one of my guild members talking about it, Colio. He was saying that at least if it's like more transparent, we know it's 30%. Now you know to attack, like, so like if you're fighting like a Rem opponent, you'll know to attack the teammates over her, especially if it's a single target attack, since her passive only allows a 20% to do the AoE counter, versus now the counter set, if it is going to be 30%, has a 30% to do a single target counter. So but it does depend on the situation. Sometimes you want her to do an AoE instead, who knows. But regardless, it was definitely surprising. I think this is why the outrage, it's like they had this quote unquote issue that they did not fix. I'm doing air quotes, that's why my tone is changing. They did not fix for what, 3 years? Look, I don't think it changed my gaming experience, minus the molding streams that I couldn't kill Rowana on Celestine, but I definitely think that's an issue, right? So I saw the comments, and this is a bit like, this is getting to where I would say that this is a bit more outrageous. I wouldn't stand on this. So I agree with everything what everyone's saying so far, in terms of if there was an issue, they should have like found out about this like way earlier. But the very fact that they didn't, that's questionable. But on the other hand, we have that like really crazy spectrum, in my opinion, is that, you know, people are saying now, oh, this is why I don't get ML5s, right? It's stated that it's, you know, what is it, at 2% or whatever, 1% to get an ML5, but I never get it. So, you know, how can we trust anything now? I think that's a bit overboard. The only reason I can say this is that in terms of an ML5, I've done multiple viewer summons where there are some players that just don't get anything. I have like 1 or 2 videos that are pretty popular, or was pretty popular on YouTube back in the day, where I did a viewer summon and the guy had like, you know, like hundreds and hundreds of galaxy bookmarks, and I would just, we didn't get a single ML5. And then there would be one that had like, you know, 120 ML bookmarks or whatever, and gets like 5 ML5 out of it, right? So in terms of like, you know, the people who get lucky will never believe that the rates are rigged. They will just think that they're really lucky. But people who don't get lucky will think that the rates are rigged, right? But it's the fact that there are just some people that are very, very lucky. Some people are just don't get lucky, especially in a session, right? We're not talking about overall. Although, albeit, if you are listening to me and you're one of those players that don't have an ML5, even never got an ML5 from a galaxy bookmark, even after 3 years, I have heard this multiple times. But again, I don't know if that would lead to that being rigged. Although I do have to say, this does look really bad on Smilegate. It's just that they had to reveal this in this way. So you definitely lose a bit of trust. But jokingly, everybody says, oh, you can't trust Smilegate, and they'll always refer back to this for quite a while. But for the players who are not joking about it, I get it. So that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big deal to me. I personally would probably want to keep the counter set the way it is, because I'm already kind of used to the RNG, but just knowing that, oh, it's 30%. So when someone counters me, it's like, oh, of course, right? It's 30%. Rather than it going back to 20%, then I don't know. I'm half on this, but I think I prefer 30% right now. Like I'm half. Sometimes I get killed by people who counter me. Sometimes I kill because I get counter on my heroes. So there's definitely, it's balanced for me. It's just definitely this is the unfortunate thing to realize so late, especially for Epic 7. I don't know what went wrong. So usually in a development team, there could be varying different things. Like it could be just one error from one software engineer that coded it at 30%. Maybe he got the memo that was 30%, and then there's a UI design team that got the memo that's supposed to be 20%. So they do their job saying that it's 20%. The software engineer, it's been 3 years now. Software engineers, they're one of the highest paid people in the gaming community in terms of the gaming industry. He probably got another job, so like no one ever really looked back on it. And so I think that I'm not trying to make an excuse for them, but I'm saying that this could be the potential. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think that they held onto the secret for ill intent. That's my point. They weren't, I don't think they were holding onto the secret for ill intent, and then this to be revealed now for no reason whatsoever. I believe that it could just have been an error by one single person and it was not checked. So this would be like more of like advice that they need to just kind of up their like routines in terms of like their work environment. That's it. I don't believe there's an ill intent behind this, but the fact that they're compensating 20 leaf, heck, I'll take it. But regardless of whatever the decision is, I'll take the 20 leaf. 1 million gold, come on. 5 million gold would be a bit better there, but 20 leaf, I'll take it. So anyways, that's it for this session of reading between the lines. I know it's a bit longer for this one, but definitely more to talk about in this one. I wanted to talk about it. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Belian, the new EEs, and then the counter set debacle. Let me know what you guys think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and love to read your comments. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.